Greetings, fellow freethinkers. The event you're about to watch was hosted by the Centre for Inquiry Ontario, an educational and outreach organization dedicated to promoting and defending science, reason, and free inquiry in every area of human endeavor. My name is Justin Trazier, and as Executive Director of CFI Ontario, I would like to take a minute to tell you about us. Our centre, located in the heart of downtown Toronto, is the first Canadian branch of CFI and is our nation's first dedicated meeting and event space for humanists and freethinkers. Our mandate encompasses a robust public education presentation series throughout Ontario, campus outreach as we support a growing network of student freethought groups, community outreach and social services to provide humanistic alternatives to religiously monopolized services and activities, and a lending library and media centre that, among other things, broadcasts videos like this across the planet. To learn more, please visit us at cfiontario.org. To get on our email list or to learn how you can support our movement or get a freethought group started at your campus, simply contact us today at info@cfiontario.org. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the video.
Okay, just a few quick words. Just wanted to tell you a bit about our upcoming events before I introduce our speaker for the evening. Those of you who haven't, please on your way out grab a copy of our newsletter so you know what's coming up. We mail these out once every 2 months. This is the one that will carry us into the end of June. The one for July and August should be mailed over very soon. The next lecture in our ongoing Voices of Reason series will be on June 6th. We have John Novak, who is a professor at Brock University, also a frequent contributor to Free Inquiry magazine, speaking on the topic of appreciating the human perspective, an invitation to educational living. So I urge you to join us for that. Following that, we'll have Greta Vosper in June 20th, I believe. Greta recently authored a book called With or Without God. Quite interesting. She's with the Progressive Christianity Association. A few other things. In the political side of things, we are very much involved in submissions to the Queen's Park Lord's Prayer Committee. The deadline has passed as far as written submissions go, but if you would still like to participate in that ongoing campaign, then please come talk to me. There's still emails and phone calls that can be done. We've also been invited, the CFI that is, to actually meet with the committee and present in person our points of view on this issue, so we're preparing for that as we speak. Other than that, we have drinks for sale at the back, so we'll do a short intermission before Q&A, and you can take advantage of that. And let me get to today's event. So we have with us a very special speaker from CFI's Los Angeles office, CFI West, Edward Tabash. Eddie Tabash is a Los Angeles attorney and chair of the CFI's First Amendment Task Force, on whose behalf he filed one of the briefs on the winning side of the California Supreme Court split decision to allow same-sex marriage on May 15th. Eddie argued to the California High Court that the ban on same-sex marriage is grounded in religious dogma and hence violates the separation of church and state. A former two-time runner-up for a seat in the California legislature, he pledges to be active in attempting to defeat a possible ballot by the religious right to overturn the decision in November. In the meantime, the Center for Inquiry and its allies celebrates the current victory for human rights and fundamental equality. Eddie Tabash is a specialist in the application of the United States Constitution to controversies swirling around religion and secularism. He's an appointee of Congressman Brad Sherman to the State Central Committee of the California Democrat Party, and also chairs the National Legal Association for Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. He is here making his first election year presentation outside of the US, informing Canadians about the grave threat to the fabric of the US secular government that is at issue in the current presidential election. Please help me welcome Edward Tabash.
It's an exceptional privilege for me to be here in this wonderful country of Canada, because were it not for Canada, I would not exist. Right before the Nazi invasion of Lithuania, my father was an Orthodox rabbi in that country, and his entire family was killed in the Holocaust. The only reason my father survived was he got a visa to come to this country and spent the war years here. So it is because of Canada that my father didn't die at the age of 27, but died at the age of 89. And I cannot come here without acknowledging that, in a sense, it was this nation that paved the way for me to be here to speak to you about the threat of the religious right. As Canadians look south, you will see a nation embroiled in a pivotal presidential election. But one thing you will not see discussed in the news media is that whether or not America remains a secular nation or becomes a theocracy hinges on who replaces one 88-year-old justice on the United States Supreme Court. People outside the United States, and even in the United States, have difficulty comprehending how a shift of one vote on the United States Supreme Court could result in a reinterpretation of the Constitution. Well, that's absolutely true, because the Constitution of the United States means no more than a majority of a minimum of 5 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court say it means at any given juncture in history. And so on the United States Supreme Court now, there is a 5-4 split. 5 justices still correctly hold that the First Amendment requires government to be neutral between believer and non-believer. 4 justices chillingly take the view that government at all branches in the United States may favor the religious collectively over the non-believer as long as they don't single out any particular religion for favoritism. And so it is this technical point which determines whether American government remains neutral and treats all of us equally, or whether the government can undergo a sea change and begin to treat believers collectively as first-class citizens and the non-believer shunted off into second-class citizenship. But before I get into the list of horribles of what is happening with the religious right, I have a few caveats. First, because I represent a non-profit entity in the United States, the Center for Inquiry, I cannot explicitly endorse or oppose any specific candidate for the presidency, even though I am speaking outside the United States. But I can inform you as to who the players are and what the position is. Secondly, before we begin the list of horribles, I'm going to take you through some history, much of which is in your handout, to demonstrate that, amazingly, the founders of the American constitutional scheme in the 1780s really did intend government neutrality in matters of religion. First of all, before we get to the First Amendment and the other 9 amendments that constitute the Bill of Rights, when the 55 authors of the original Constitution in 1787 gathered, they refused to pray for guidance. That is a sign of a secular intent. Also, the original United States Constitution, even prior to the addition of the Bill of Rights containing the First Amendment, had only one reference to religion, and that was a negative one. Article 6, Clause 3 prohibited any religious test for public office. And even a future Supreme Court justice said during the debates on that provision that it would be fine if pagans and people with no religion were elected to office. Now, the key players in the creation of a governmental scheme that separates God and government were actually the future 3rd President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, and the future 4th President of the United States, James Madison. And these 2 people, more than anyone else, were responsible for guiding the American fledgling government to a position of a point of strict government